Time has come now to reach out to our research colleagues in universities. And we are glad that we were here with many partners, including Utrecht University, Kenyatta University, Strathmore, University of Dar es Salaam, and others. And this process has three objectives. One is to create a program that can generate evidence, hard evidence from what we do, as a way of helping us test whether what we are doing is making impact. The second is an objective for African researchers. We know that Africa has very low research output globally, and we hope that this will be our contribution to getting African researchers to increase their agency, especially in dissemination, in publication, in all these others, and especially for young researchers or early career researchers and women researchers in academia. And that objective is just to collaborate for our children. Our education systems in East Africa require many people for change to happen. So we are happy that we are collecting many friends along the way, and who knows that in 5 years we may have developed capacities of many researchers that are doing amazing work for research in our schools and education systems across Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda.
The reason why we are here at the co-creation is because we're very heavy on evaluation. We're very heavy on seeing what works, what doesn't work, what can we do to inform policies and programs.
I think this co-creation part was very important, especially because the further we come to the goal and the further we come to the research, but also to scaling the evidence, the more motivated everyone seems to get. And I feel we're now at the phase where we're really just in front of the start line and getting ready to go. And I think I have a very good feeling.
Well, I'm part of this workshop because what you're doing on CPC life skills is what is in the core of what our core business and mandate here in Kenyatta University is. That is where we train teachers who will go out there to teach in our schools. And when they are teaching, these are some of the very varied skills that we expect them to instill in our learners.
It is very important for our teachers to have this knowledge of life skills and values, because in the field where they are required to deliver, they need themselves to be people who have emotional intelligence, they have good communication skills, they have collaborative skills, so that they can enhance the same and instill the same in our learners. They also need to be teachers of integrity, teachers who are responsible, teachers who respect themselves, because we say charity begins at home. So if the teacher is respectful, is a teacher of integrity, he or she is likely to inculcate the same to the learners.
I think it is a very good design that all of the stakeholders come together and talk on equal basis, on having an exchange of ideas that is based on the problem itself. Everybody focuses really on solving the problem. And I thought the atmosphere was really open and based on arguments, and very fruitful and very good culture of debate, and very friendly and collaborative.
We always need to work together with policymakers, with implementers, with funding agencies to see how can we collectively make something and make a community of practice, a large mass of people to move this agenda forward for our country, Kenya.
Very warm welcome to all of you. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everyone joining us today for this ALiVE Learnshop. Please let us know the organization you're joining us from. Introduce yourself in the chat. Make use of the chat rooms and just let us know who you are and where you work. And it would be nice for us to keep in touch with you even afterwards. Thank you for joining us for this ALiVE Learnshop. For those joining us for the first time, ALiVE is a collaborative of 14 civil society organizations that are championing the cause of life skills and values education in East Africa. Our focus is on working with education systems to embed and integrate life skills into curriculum, assessment, teacher training, and pedagogy so that all children across East Africa can learn and thrive. For the last over 5 years now, we have been at this work, and we have in the process developed contextualized tools and use that to assess over 45,000 adolescents in 3 key competencies that our education systems prioritize as critical. And we have also built a critical mass of over 800 system actors, educators in integrating life skills and values in curriculum, in assessment, and in classroom practice. We have built a regional network of researchers who are working to explore what is working in nurturing life skills and values as a means to supporting the implementation of competence-based education in the region. It's a joy for us to have you this afternoon or this morning, wherever you're watching or listening in from. And we believe and know that to have this diverse community of educators, of researchers, of policymakers, of advocates is critical and very instrumental in our cause, in our journey, and in the work that we do. And it's always an honor to have you join us in these Learnshops. Today, we have a conversation that is very timely and very deeply necessary. And we just want to reflect on the contextualization of life skills education. And we are looking into this not simply as refining curriculum or adjusting program, but we are interrogating the very foundations of how we understand learning, how we understand personhood, how we understand human development in our societies. Today we'll be asking, with humility and boldness, whose knowledge counts, whose values shape what is taught in the classrooms, and how can education truly support children and young people to thrive, not just academically, but as individuals who are rooted in context, who are rooted in culture, who are rooted in society. So it's a great opportunity for us, and we are grateful that you have joined us. Joining us in this discussion is Professor Maria Han from Utrecht University. Maria works as a professor of intercultural education at Utrecht in the Netherlands, and she is a published author whose work has taken her across Latin America, Africa, and Europe, where she is based. And together with her today, we will explore a number of questions, some of which we will encounter in the breakout rooms. And specifically, we'll be looking at what does it mean to contextualize life skills in ways that are rooted in the African understanding of learning and development. How can we adapt or adopt, not just importing, but adapting life skills and values education in ways that are critically intentional, but also contributes to decolonizing education systems. And a critical question we'll be engaging with is, can life skills education be politically neutral, or is it inherently about power, agency, and justice? Join me today to welcome Professor Maria to share with us. I encourage us to speak honestly, listen generously, but also remain open to learning and reimagining as we share together. Professor Maria, you're warmly welcome to this learning community.
Thank you so much, Stella, for this introduction and the invitation to speak here today and to learn from all of you about these important topics. And you said this very, very beautifully, and this is exactly what we hope to be doing. I've come to know the ALiVE community only for a year ago, and I'm very impressed about its energy, its power, its mission, and its confidence to bring about real change in education in East Africa. And I'm very honored to be able to contribute a little bit, hopefully, to this beautiful goal that you've set. And what I'm trying to do today is to make a connection to my work on the cultural nature of learning and how this also can become political, to issues of decolonialization, and what all of this might mean also for the uptake of life skills education in East Africa. And I will take you through a couple of authors and ideas that have been particularly inspirational throughout my career and some of my own work. And this is unfinished work. I should warn you, this is unfinished work, and we are only beginning to explore it. And we need the community of ALiVE, and you are now part of that community, even if you weren't yesterday, to find out what, to find an answer to these questions. Now let me share my screen and then introduce you a little bit of the work, so that my own work, so that you have an idea where I'm coming from. I'm moving to this slide. And so I've done work in Mexico with a Native American community. I've done work in the Netherlands with immigrant minority groups and their parenting, but also work in Kenya on parenting. And in all this work, what I've tried to do is to capture the variety of, also to ask myself the question, so how are these differences used? Somebody saying something to me? No. Okay.
Presentation.
David?
I don't know whether you could put in presentation mode.
Okay.
You could put presentation to presentation mode.
Yeah.
All right. And now? Is it better?
No.
Am I not sharing?
You're sharing, but it's very small. You could put it on presentation mode.
Okay. Probably, I don't know how.
Or Stella, you could share from your end so that she just speaks over the slides.
Let me try that.
So I stop sharing?
Yeah, you stop sharing.
Sure.
I try to
Sure.
share.
Sure.
Okay. Is my mind showing?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, shall I continue then?
Yes, Prof.
All right. So what I try to do in my work is to look at if these notions on learning and development, I mean, they do not only differ from each other, but they also have a different impact for people. So for instance, what I try to do in my work is to look at For instance, in my work with Native Americans in Mexico, people would say that these people do not teach their children because they teach their children in a different way. They teach their children more from child initiative and observation and participation, and they don't use explicit teaching in their communities. So they were seen as they were neglecting their children. But in my study, I've tried to show that they are not neglecting their children, but they have a different interpretation of what learning and development should be. So since then, my work has been on be careful of what notions of development and learning are put forward as the norm and which are not. And this is also a notion that or an idea that I will use today, and I would like to enter in discussion with you with respect to how African notions of learning and development are represented in life skills education in Africa. So we could go to the next, Stella. So what I'd like to do, I want to touch upon 3 different topics. First of all, a bit on contextualization and how we can move further than simply putting into context. Then I would like to talk a bit about African understandings of learning and education, and then move to a third point or argument where I would ask, how can we take decolonialization seriously when we implement or when we use life skills education in East Africa in education. So, and my plea would be for a critical adoption of life skills education. And of course, it's evident that this can only be done with the community. So I hope you're with me and that you could give us input so we can do this task collectively. All right, so then a bit about, like I said, the first part on contextualization of life skills education from critical pedagogy. We can move to the next, please. So maybe you've heard about the idea that contextualization of life skills education is important because every context needs different life skills. In one context, it might be very important to learn about emancipation, gender roles, and in another context, it might be very important to learn about financial literacy or something. But what we like to do today is to move beyond the idea of that we will just adjust learning life skills education to a context. Next, please. So these are difficult questions, I realize, and I also find them difficult, but I still want to ask them. So I'm asking these questions around the uptake of life skills education in the African context from a critical pedagogy and decolonization lens. And we will go into these concepts more in depth in the rest of the presentation. Now, how much do you think is the global discourse on life skills education shaped by Eurocentric paradigms? Yeah. And also, since in Europe, mainstream notions on learning is seen as a technique. How does this impact on the uptake in Africa? This is something that I have been talking a lot to my students, to my colleague, that in the learning sciences, often people do not see learning as a political, cultural, social construct, but mainly as a technical one. And if we will also in the African context take on such a perspective on learning, what does it mean? This is the question that I want to ask and discuss with you. And immediately following that question is the following question: can we see life skills education then as something politically neutral? And these questions are so important, I think, because life skills education is introduced just precisely to solve the problem that learning is merely seen as a technique, to address the so-called learning crisis. So I think we must be very careful, since we are at the beginning of this exciting transition, that we do not make the same mistake. Yeah. All right, next one, please. Now there's a scholar that's called Giroux, Henri Giroux, and you see his picture here. He's a professor in the United States. He's earned many rewards for his work, and I'm very, very inspired by this Henri Giroux, especially because he is saying not all education is leaning to learning. And this is something also that resonates a lot with, with the research that ALiVE has been doing. There's a lot of education going on, but not all education is leading to learning. And we see this everywhere in the world. Now, Henri Giroux takes the example of teaching to the test. He says, a lot of teaching or education is to make, just to make sure that children can do the test. So actually, this is only about accountability to higher authorities. It's not about the child who's learning. So he said some education is designed to restrict the development of students as critical things, such as teaching to the test. And he says, and coming back to this idea of seeing education as a method that doesn't have to do anything with real persons, have that situated in the world and want things and who want to make a future. He says, seeing education as a technique, it ignores the most fundamental question of what is education for, namely to make sure that education produces students as agents that can decide over their own future and understand their place in the world. Next, please. So what does life skills education then mean from a critical pedagogy point of view, right? Well, for sure, it means situating life skills education in the particular socio-cultural, economical, political context of Africa and socio-cultural, economical, political context of individual students, but in such a way that students will gain agency over their lives, become active learners and producers of their own futures. And this is something to always remember in every kind of reform and every teaching learning situation in the classroom. And we must be aware of those pedagogies, as Henri Giroux said, that can obstruct such a perspective. Yeah, next, please. So to give you an example, life skills education might adopt a particular vision on human development that doesn't align with the socio-cultural, socio-economic, cultural and political context of sub-Saharan or East Africa. And I found an example in the study by De Jager, and they actually edited a very interesting book, which probably some of you know, about life skill education, that was published in 2022. And De Jager, she said, life skills education programs often have a deficit approach, stressing individual psychosocial and behavioristic causes for a problem, like, for instance, alcohol use or something, or related to youth unemployment or teen pregnancy, but they forget the underlying systemic social and economic conditions that create these conditions. Such a view on development might easily be taken up in the life skills education program. And so this is an example of where you can see that it really matters how you see development, what you see the cause of development not going well. Now, in our discussion that we hope to have in the breakout groups, I suggest that we talk about, this question of how can we learn from critical pedagogues such as Henri Giroux and critical pedagogy in general, the cause of development when we do contextualization of life skills education. And I've come up with a couple of concrete questions that might be helping us there. So do you think that there are certain interpretations of life skills education that do not align with social, economic, cultural, and political context of East Africa? How can we make sure that, that life skills education dangerous. Students as agents that can decide over their future and understand their place in the world in the African context. So let's move now to, in the next slide, to a bit on, what do we know actually about African understanding of learning and education? This has been a topic early on in my career. And you see there my thesis, which I did in Mexico. And it's called Learning as a Cultural Practice. And I've argued there that, learning is not a technique. Learning is really deeply rooted in cultural practices. Like I just hoped to have illustrated with the example, where that mentioned in the beginning, that the people, the children in the Masawa community in Mexico, they were not taught to. The parents would teach them. But the expectation was that they took initiative for participating in important cultural tasks with the community. Next, please. Now, I thought it would be good if we would take an African scholar to, when we think about what is typical about African learning. So I wanted to share with you the thoughts of Professor Beam Nsamnang. I hope I pronounce this correctly. He was a former professor of psychology and learning sciences and director of the teacher colleagues at the University of Bamenda in Cameroon. And he bases his research on his work, ethnographic work of the Nsu community in Cameroon. And it might also be that I don't pronounce this right, but because I only know it by reading. But I've learned what he has been writing, and I was very intrigued by the difference that he made, that he described between what he calls a Eurocentric vision on learning and an African vision on learning. He says, Eurocentric vision on learning is based on the idea that, development is linear. It goes towards a clear endpoint, goal-directed. While in the African vision on learning, it's more characterized by it's more cyclical. The Eurocentric vision on learning pays much more attention on biological development, something that unfolds naturally, while in the African vision, it's about the social context, it's about social participation. The Eurocentric vision on learning is more about training into academic disciplines, while in the African vision on learning, it's about social competence and social responsibility. And in the next slide, we will see a citation from him. He has come up with this idea that he thinks is typical for African learning and development. This key concept he calls social responsibility. And this is what he says about it. He says, within the African worldview, human beings not only need other humans, but they also need social responsibility to individuate adequately and attain full personhood. Thus, a sense of self cannot be achieved without reference to the community of other humans in terms of being interconnected and enacting one's social roles. And next slide, please. This vision that Nsamnang has voiced in his publications had two functions. It was a correction of the Western ego or Eurocentric theories, such as those of Piaget and others, that were very individualistic. So it was a correction of the overall, say, universal notions of development, but it also functioned as a representation of African perspectives on development and learning. Now, what I also found very insightful when I was reading on notions of human development and theories on human development, it should say here, that what you find a lot in psychology and human development in that are Eurocentered, it's all about autonomy and independence. And in African notions of development intelligence, it's all about, you know, to be increasingly socially responsible and on social recognition. And of course, there needs to be a balance. And it's also true that not every child in Africa would be, you know, would show these social responsibilities, as we have seen also in the research that ALiVE has been doing. But these are very important values coming from, or insights coming from the African. I think when implementing life skills education. Next, please. It is important, however, to not to think about culture as something that is fixed, you know, that is in an essentialistic sense, like African development is always like this, and American development is always like that. It's not like that, because our notions of culture are also defined by the contact that we have with other cultures. And we are constantly in, maybe we can go back one. Yeah, we are constantly in touch with other cultures, and it also matters in what, you know, your socioeconomic and historical context. And I came across this week a study by Witten, Saval, and Adams. And Saval is a professor that is taking on a chair in my faculty, and he has written on South African youth perception of flourishing, and he showed really clearly that there, you know, although that these youth, they had a mixed influence in their setting in South Africa. They were really influenced by the history of oppression, but also contact with the English culture and the socioeconomic circumstances. So it was all a mix of, you know, of what was important in that context. So you can never say that something is entirely, you know, African or Dutch or English. It is always a mix of the different influences that people have been undergoing. Yeah. Next, please. So then in our discussion that we hope to have today, I would love to engage in this question. What are African concepts of learning and development according to you, to the people that are living this reality? And concrete questions could be, do you ever experience in your professional practice that you work with concepts of development and learning that you don't feel comfortable with, that you don't agree with, or are not in line with your community, with your family? I sometimes also have, you know, encounter concepts that I'm not comfortable with. For instance, behavioristic ideas of learning that come from psychology, or maybe human development ideas as purely autonomy. Now, what are, according to you, these traditional concepts of learning, child development, education? How can these be relevant for the implementation of life skills education in your own practice? So I'm very curious to hear what people are thinking, what answers will come out of these questions. And I think they are important for us to ask and to answer. So let's go to the last bits. And next slide. The difficult task of taking decolonialization seriously. And I mean, I've discussed decolonization literature with my students here in the Netherlands, and they tell me, yes, miss, this is very interesting, but it's also abstract, and you know, there's a lot of critique, but there's a lot of concrete ideas how to do this. And I say, you're right. I mean, we're not there yet. So, but I do believe, and I understood that also in the team, in the ALiVE team, a lot of people, you know, talk about decolonization and what it means. I think it is important for us to understand how we can use these ideas for the adoption or critical adoption of life skills education in East Africa. And so for sure, My plea is for a critical adoption of life skills education, and instead of just, implementing it without studying it, holding it up and turning it over, and, what do you like about it, and how does it fit your context? It should be adopted just like that. Yeah. All right. So let's move on here. So as all of you probably know, life skills education is used amongst others. I mean, there's multiple routes of life skills education, but for one thing, it is used as a concept in international development by a lot of donor organizations. And I think this is a very good, this is done in a very positive and very productive way. For instance, UK Department of International Development, USA, World Bank, UNICEF, all of them, they say, education should prepare, my screen is gone now, but I can read from my own PowerPoint now, because I was just reading something.
Okay.
Stella, screen.
I don't know what happened.
It's okay. Yeah. Okay. Shall we stop?
Please continue.
I continue, right?
Yes.
So they say that, education should prepare students both academically and with what we call life skills, meaning non-cognitive skills, character skills, socio-emotional skills. And sometimes this is also called, under the umbrella, quality education. There are many more terms that are used. Now, this is all, life skills education in international development is pushed forward also by donor organization because of what sometimes is called the learning crisis. Yeah. And they say it, in the book that I also have pointed out, they say that children and adolescents in developing countries, they say, do not always benefit from extended years of schooling in terms of what they are learning. So life skills education is sort of seen as a solution to the learning crisis. The fact that we have a lot of education and not all education is leading to learning. Now, we have to move on just by audio then. And so the next topic that I'd like to focus on is what actually is then decolonialization. What is this thing, right? Now, the way I understood it is that decolonialization is a perspective that seeks to critique, to undo, but also to radically rethink Euro-centered ways of thinking, being, and power, served, enabled, and legitimized former colonization processes. Right? So this, and I'm arguing with other authors that this is also needed for concepts in education. There's a lot of concepts in education that has been adopted that come from, Euro-centered ways of thinking. And this could be true, for instance, of models of human development in which autonomy is put center stage, or certain models of development in which certain ideals of development that are Western are putting up, as an upper, at the last stage of development, where they are not in line with African ways of seeing development. Also, the idea that there are certain objective knowledge, and that there is certain objective knowledge on development education, which is just technical. This is simply dangerous, not to see how certain concepts are adopted that have a particular value and meaning, which probably is not to the advantage of the one receiving it. So decolonization in this area is, to to critique, to undo, and radically rethink these notions. Yes, and there we have the screen again. All right. So, more simply said, decolonization theories warn us for uncritical adoption of Eurocentric concepts, and they plea for emancipation of African concepts. Now, my question is, how does that then have an impact for the adoption of life skills education? This is what I'd like us to talk about. Yeah, next, please. So I plea for critical adoption. Stella already mentioned the term critical adoption of these very important concepts of life skill education, while also realizing that I think it's important to understand it's not either or. So because when you adopt an idea, it's not that you would leave your own way of thinking or your own culture. You don't have to drop that. You can adopt something, but also keep what you had. And I'm using, in order to understand this idea, for me, the notion of James Clifford was important when he said, all cultures are intercultures. Not going well. Every culture, every now bit in our discussion that knowledge we hope to have in the breakout groups, heritage that is cultural, was born in between cultures, and it reflects the encounter of the different cultures that the travel that this concept have gone through. Culture, every now in our discussion that knowledge we hope to have in the breakouts. And you see the book by Clifford, a traditional African way of dressing, but that young man also has a cigarette in his mouth, so both can go together, right? I've seen this in my own work in Kenya also, this critical adoption, and I'm showing this picture of the report that's called Learning Under the Tree, where I saw that parents in Kenya would adopt the parenting, some of the parenting training that was offered to them, would stress communication with children instead of harsh. Of what and child, so they wouldn't entirely adopt this. They would integrate it into a new concept. And this is how I imagine that the critical adoption of life skills education will work. Yes, can we go on to the next? So I would be thrilled if in our discussion we would think about this question. So how do you think it is possible to make sure that life skills education is adopted in a critical manner? First asking you, is it really necessary in the area of life skills education to radically rethink Euro-centered concepts? Maybe you think it is already very much in line with what is considered development in your own context or community. But if you think it needs to be rethought, what might these be? Does it make sense to you to promote an African concept of life skills education? Maybe coin it differently, promote it because it fits better. Maybe we should even come with a label. And do you think that critical adoption of life skills education can always also move forward the process of decolonization, the emancipation of an African way of learning and development? And would this also be beneficial? Why or why not? I think this is my last slide, and we have time for questions now. And maybe Stella, we should stop share screen to share the screen.
Okay, so Martin, just let us know if there's some questions in the chat room.
Yes, thanks, Prof and Stella. No, we don't have, we only have one about asking, about sharing the slides. We will share the slides later on. Yeah. So colleagues, feel free. We have some few minutes to ask Prof either to clarify something or in case you have a question that's related to what the presentation has tackled. Thanks.
Prof. Hello?
Yes, Daniel. Go
Yes,
ahead.
I wanted a clarification of these two terminologies, which are decolonization and critical adaptation. Are they the same or different?
I would say they are different in the sense that decolonization is a much broader process. And critical adoption is more of a practical elaboration in the area of life skills education or other terminology. But yes, it's sort of the consequence of decolonization. If decolonization is sort of critical rethinking of something that's Eurocentric, it follows from that you won't just, adopt something automatically. You won't without critical rethinking it, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously there is a lot in life skills education that resonates with the reality, the East African reality. There's a reason why you want to adopt it, but probably not without critically rethinking it. That's my suggestion. Making sense, Daniel?
Yeah, sure, it makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, colleagues. Any other question? Meanwhile, the logistics team kindly set up the Zoom breakout rooms. Yes, Stella, can come in.
No, that's what I was going to say, Martin. Thanks. Prof, I liked what you talked about pedagogies that obstruct rather than enhance life skills education. And I was just wondering, some rather than enhancing, and we are doing it in a way to support nurturing of the skills, but in a number of ways at the same time obstructing acquisition of the skills. It's just a food for thought for me and anyone else.
Yeah, so what if you would, train certain skills and test them in a way that it doesn't give any agency for children, so they would just, learn these skills in order to do well on the tests, for instance, but they wouldn't allow them, to understand their own reality or to take agency over their reality, then it would become like, again, something that would remain in the classroom, that doesn't have any relevance for their own lives. So if it becomes like a trick, so if they learn, let's say, reflection skills, they would be taught and learned in a way that that the children do not own it really, that they would learn it as a trick in order to do well in education, but not, that it doesn't function for their own lives.
I get it.
Thanks, Prof. Prof, there's one question on the chat.
Yeah.
elaboration of what a critical adoption of life skills education looks like in practice and how to balance integration while still engaging the global framework.
Yes. Well, this is precisely of course, the mission. This is so I think in order to, I don't think that I can answer this, but what I try to do is to, to think, in order to answer that, I first need to know how you are thinking about the adoption of life skills. So pedagogy is sort of warning us that not all education is learning. And I think while we are implementing life skills education in African classrooms, I think we have to observe very carefully what is the effect of that. Does it really impact on, in the learning culture that is currently the learning culture in these classrooms? I think we have to monitor this very carefully because it is not unlikely that they will be adopted in certain ways that also have shaped the adoption of other educational reforms. So I think it is a risk that we really must face and manage.
Great. Thanks a lot, Prof. I know that's the question that we are going to engage with even in the next sessions. So, colleagues, we'll go into the breakout rooms for a discussion of about 20 minutes. And we expect the teams to report back after the 20 minutes. There will be about six rooms, and or room 1 and room 4. You and purpose of life skills education. So you pick any. Me, I want to during session. You will talk. So I will post this question in the chat. You can have them on the chat with you. And then Professor and Stella will be moving to the various rooms in case you need some explanations or things that need clarification. Yeah. So the questions are here. So when you go to the rooms, you will identify 2 people, one person or rapporteuring, so that you're able to give feedback after the session. Just a moment, I post questions one by one. There are too many for Zoom. That's group 1 and 4. The questions. Key highlights from your discussion. Then you'll share the notes together, the notes with us after the session. So you don't need to present everything when you come, but you just highlight a few things about the question, then you submit the questions, the responses to David. Is it clear, colleagues?
Yes, Martin, and we are already leaving the room, the main room to the meeting rooms.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine.
Oren, we still have a number of people in the main room. Oren, kindly share the question to group 4.
Colleagues, the breakout rooms are looking for you. There are rooms with 2 people, with 1 person. Kindly join in any breakout room. Go and check under more, click join breakout room, and you choose the breakout room that has been assigned to you. We expect everyone to discuss. Yeah. Thanks. I see about 10 here. If you could join a breakout room, that would be great. Kinoti.
Recording in progress.
Hello, guys. Hello. Walter? Yes. Go on, you can hear me. I seem not to hear. Patricia.
Hi guys, we are on the breakout rooms. So please you can join one of the rooms that I've assigned you. Thank you.
Okay. Um, we are engaging with question 1 and we just want to understand what happens in our context because they normally say that context matters. And you see now in the presentation, we were talking about
Recording in progress.
Hello, colleagues. We are waiting for some members. I don't know whether you can hear me. Yeah, they are coming now. Okay, good. Hello, hello.
Hello, Martin. Martin.
Yes, can you hear me? Are the groups all represented here now?
Did we lose some people in the process?
That's why I'm also asking whether we are all here or some people. I think they are joining. People are joining.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think we can move on just to hear from the various groups. I know the time was not enough for us to cover all the questions, and we had also left the groups to decide on.
Recording in progress.
So we'll have maximum 2 minutes per group. Just you tell us the question you handled, and then you give us your feedback, what you discussed or what emerged from the discussion. Thank you. In no particular, no, in order. I will start with group 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that. So group 1.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Group 1, we looked at question 1. How can we use local teaching approaches and ideas to make life skills education more relevant to our communities? Our discussion, we majorly focused on the transition from the traditional way of education to the modern way of education, which is what education systems are trying to take up and encourage. But of course, because each region or each community has different ways that they traditionally approached education, it has made it complicated to pass on education in the same way in this modern day. So there's a lot of misunderstanding of the concepts and the terminologies that we are now using. And this is making maybe the approaches used by teachers now more complex. Some of them find it difficult to understand and deliver. Thank you.
Martin, are you still there?
Martin disappeared.
Sorry, I was muted. I was saying thank you very much. So group 2, you can come on. Then in case you have
maybe we could have group 4, Martin. We could have for adding to this.
Yes. Group 4. Sorry. Yeah,
so
group 4.
We take that off.
Yes, group 4, since you discussed the same things.
Yes,
group
Benjamin,
heritage that is cultural was born in between culture.
Then in case
you have maybe we could have group 4, Martin.
Group 4.
We could have
Yes.
adding to this.
Group 4, we had
the
question, how can we use local teaching approaches and ideas to make life skill education more relevant to our communities? And in the discussion, we looked at part of the African approaches that are meaningful but also very effective. It's like one of them is the Ubuntu. Ubuntu emphasizes interdependence, where Africans depend on the community, they depend on one another. Ubuntu says, I am because we are. In other words, it anchors on collective responsibility and collective ownership. In that case, the teaching emphasizes empathy. It emphasizes community, well-being. So in this case, if such is integrated, life skills are also introduced as a Ubuntu approach, but also promoting interdependence and relevance for the existence of the community, then it would be relevant and appropriate. Then in the group also, we had the voice where we are talking about that their approaches like the stick, using the stick to teach children will not work. Because the stick causes intimidation, we'll need to remove the stick and the carrot method, but create a safe learning approach to impart life skills and values within our community. Then from the group also, there were contributions about using storytelling and proverbs to impart values and life skills. And this is an effective approach which can be integrated within the curriculum. For example, when writing the curriculum, how can we use stories whereby learners or students can be able to reflect on the lessons learned and also how to apply them in their daily life. And then also storytelling was used continuously, a very effective approach that is lasting, but from it, we are able to share lessons learned and also application of those lessons. The other thing that the group also discussed is around apprenticeship. In the African setting, apprenticeship is very core to effectively imparting skills.
Jen, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The other thing is around apprenticeship. It's an effective way to impart knowledge and skills and values among learners. For example, crafts, if you see the teaching of craft, farming, metalwork, was something experienced people within the community would bring on board young people, the youth, the young people, and mentor them. So we could practice-based approaches like apprenticeship, learning on the job. You could have like mentoring approaches that are really effective, but also practice-based approaches and doing it practically. Then the other one that was suggested is play. Play is a local approach, sustainable and beautifully embedded within our society, which can be able to teach skills like problem solving, collaboration, creativity. There is a participant from Tanzania who talked about that. For them, in their culture, there is something called Komborela. And this Komborela can be used to teach a multiplicity of skills through play. Lastly, role modeling has been recommended as an effective way to train values and life skills, where children would be inspired to adopt skills and values such as talking, behavior, problem solving, creativity, be used to teach a multiplicity of skills through and play. These were highly esteemed in society. And one example, they said girls can be inspired by successful engineers or mathematicians. Even likewise, we can also have role models who can champion life skills and values in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm feeling your group had a different clock, that you had too much time. Group 2.
Thank you so much, Martin.
Yeah, 05.
Group 2, we attempted number 3, but the responses seem to be similar to the responses of the previous presenter. Question number 3 is, what local or traditional practices around learning and growing up do you value or see in your community? One of those practices is one of teaching children handwork. We had to collect raw materials and come up with something new. And during those sessions, we are fostering creativity, we are fostering cooperation, among other skills. There was also storytelling, where parents would tell us stories and then would encourage us to come up with stories. I think that one brings out a variety of skills. Creativity is one of such skills. There was also allowing us to follow our, what should I say, boys, girls following their mothers and what they need to do when they grow up. There was also parents would sometimes allow us to resolve our conflicts in a crude way, like fighting, before telling us the best way to resolve those conflicts. I think it was good for us to learn from experience. Communities would encourage us to show sportsmanship after competing, where you meet the opposing players and maybe hug each other. That one shows that we are not enemies as competitors. I don't know, my group members can add a few, what I've said.
That's okay.
Yes.
That's okay. We'll receive your
still on?
feedback together. I mean, you share with me. Richard, you share your feedback with me just for the interest of time. Yeah, thank you. Group 5, you can mention what has not come up. I was in group 5, something storytelling, etc. Don't mention. You can mention those unique ones. Over to you, John.
Okay. Thank you, Martin. In group 5, we discussed the question number 1. What are some African beliefs or traditions about how children learn and grow? And we had to know what the question wants us to do. And we discovered that we first have to list the African beliefs and traditions through which children learn and grow. And we came out with some of them. One has been mentioned as the storytelling. The other one were the music. This music includes dance and songs. Through music, the society conveys a lot of message to the children in their growing and learning by portraying to show how people dress, how people greet, and how people talk and interact with the society. And also they convey a lot of messages which help the children to grow. So far, we also came across the other belief, which is demonstration. This is through demonstration, the community also show ways to behave, live with people, morals, the do's and the don'ts to children, and they help them to learn and grow through them. And the other thing here,
maybe the last one.
This is the last one, the traditional punishments. And in a lot of African societies, there are some punishments which have been put or enforced to people who go against the regulations or the rules which have been put by the society members. So when encountering such things, those people have to be punished. And some of the punishments are being made publicly so that the whole community should learn and avoid to do the things which are not allowed to be done in the society. So through this also children learn and grow by these beliefs or tradition. I think those are among many of the traditions and beliefs we use to.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Colleagues, I know we have reached the top of the hour, and I don't know your guidance, Stella. Oh, I don't know that you're there. Oh, David. Do we stop here, or we hear just one group and we end here? Stella or David? Okay. Group 6 say they don't have. Yes.
Sorry, Martin. I think they can share with you maybe the notes because of time. I think we also need to respect people's time. And so that all those we can also compile them later on and share with Prof.
Okay, that's good. So groups, the last two groups, you could share your notes with me or with David, then we'll compile together. We'll send back those responses later on with everyone again. Thanks. So the next item, Prof, you want to say something? Then we can have Stella close the session. Yes.
Just I think these ideas are very important. I hear very interesting things that I've also read in the literature. I think it's super important that we gather those ideas and we think through how we can integrate them with life skills education while integrating in the school system. These are so important that we really take these ideas seriously. So great work. I'm very eager to see continuation uptake of these ideas that the groups have shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Over to you, David. Stella is traveling to join. Our internet dropped. David, quickly, you can run us through this and close.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone who joined. I think before we wind it up, there is an evaluation or rather feedback that we request that you take just maybe 2 minutes of your time. There are just 3 questions we've posted in the chats. Just give us a quick feedback before we move to the next bit as we wait, Stella. So I've posted in the chats. Just follow that so that you give us quick feedback.
Yeah, so colleagues, we are keeping silent for 1 to 2 minutes. Then Stella will come to close. David, seems there's something wrong with the forms. It's asking us to join, to sign in.
There's something wrong with the form, by the way.
It's asking us to sign in.
No, I think yeah, Keynote has needed with some settings around. Sorry.
Mine was fine, the first one you shared, so I've been able to fill in. Did anything change?
I think it should be okay. It should be okay.
Okay.
Just refresh, yeah.
So, as we complete that, David, would you? I'm sorry, I dropped off at some point. My internet just went off.
No, still, I think we are at the last moment. We had requested for 2 minutes to come to fill the form, the evaluation form, and then you can close the session. So you should be preparing to close in the next 1 minute. Thank you. Stella, are you able to talk now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I just want to really, really appreciate everyone for the time that you've given to this. Thank you, Professor Maria, for the deep discussions around, how we can learn from critical pedagogy in contextualizing life skills education, how we can learn from the global discourse on life skills education that is largely Eurocentric in nature, but also with a lot of knowledge rooted within the African context that we can harness and invest from to improve our practice and our work. It is, I believe it's a great opportunity for us. I listening to the feedback was very resourceful and very approaches that we can borrow from existing cultural and socially constructed knowledge and practices that have been there for generations, that we can still pull back and bring them into the classroom was really very, very interesting. But also looking, into the number of questions that are emerging from the discussion. What could we be doing innocently and passionately even that could be obstructing learning rather than facilitating learning? These were very, very useful. And how can we support, classrooms? How can we harness from the cultural reservoirs to support classroom practice? I listened into a conversation within the discussion groups, and a number of things came up, like some of the practices that are in the classroom that are not supportive, like using English as a language and a medium of instruction in a predominantly non-English speaking community. How does that affect the child? What can we speak to that? Teaching to test, even when we are emphasizing and pushing for competence-based education, so much so that you have children doing projects to tick and pass and get grades rather than build capacity and build agency. And looking at activity-based learning that's so full of activities and the activities are just ticking the boxes rather than using this as a medium.
Yeah. Yes, how are you? You're fine.
And
How is
a
school?
lot that we can
good. How is teacher?
Draw on. I appreciate. Martin, unmute. Yes. So thank you so much for the time and for the commitment to this process. We are still on with the conversation. You can follow us on our social media handles and join in the conversation of how can we decolonize learning and draw as much as we can from the African knowledge reservoirs and cultural practices to inform our teaching and learning in the classroom in a more African and a more contextual manner. Thank you so much. And thanks to you, Professor, for giving us this time. Over to you, David or Martin. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening and have a good day for those who are still early in the day. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
We are really pleased to release a new book to the global education community. This book is titled The Contextualization of 21st Century Skills Assessment in East Africa. We are members of the Regional Education Learning Initiative working in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Our work and our vision is rooted in the conviction that our children require life skills and values. This is our way of calling the 21st century skills or social-emotional learning competencies and other terms that are used in other contexts. We conducted a household assessment that reached more than 45,000 adolescents in close to 37,000 households. And this large-scale assessment might be arguably the largest piece of work or assessment conducted in the context of East Africa. This book is very unique. What is contained in this book is our own emancipation, is our own telling of a story, rather than other people telling our story, rising up to the occasion so that we are in charge of our story. Many countries in sub-Saharan Africa have not been able to do such work. So we are really proud and we congratulate everyone who participated in writing this book. More than half of them are first-time authors for the work they have done that is splendid in getting our voice heard. We are ready to collaborate with the world until when we achieve our vision that every learner in East Africa acquires values and life skills.